What's up, football world? I am Bucky Brooks, and this is the Bucky Brooks Show, where we take on all things NFL. And look, man, it's been a very news-packed weekend or beginning of the week, but a lot of news coming out about our favorite NFL veterans as as minicamp officially starts this week. Mandatory minicamp is on the horizon. You'll see all the NFL teams bring in their veterans and their young players. And this is the mandatory minicamp that everyone is expected to show up and show out at. This is the one time where you have the entire team in the building. You get a chance to not only meet with them, you get them on the field and do all the things that you want to do with the team before you give them 6 weeks off ahead of training camp. So this week is a big week. There'll be a lot of news that comes out this week. And so because of that, we're going to make sure that we have 3 podcasts that come out this week to talk about all the things that come out of the mini camps to set us up for what should be a very exciting training camp run and exciting season. But before we even get to the mini camps, let's talk about the biggest story that took place in kind of a news dump at the end of last week. Aaron Rodgers signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it was a big deal because we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for the 4-time MVP to make a decision on whether he was going to play or not and where he was going to spend maybe his final season in the NFL. Well, that came to a head last week when Aaron Rodgers decided that he was going to sign a 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers, 1 year, $13 million deal to finish or maybe continue playing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And initially, I went on and had a podcast, and I wasn't really in love with the move because I feel like, and I felt like for a long time, that Aaron Rodgers was a declining player. He no longer was the 4-time MVP. He hasn't played to that level for a while. He didn't play at his final year in Green Bay. He didn't play to that level his 2 seasons in New York, even though one of those was prematurely cut short with an Achilles tear. And it's unlikely that a 41-year-old player will somehow regain his Pro Bowl form when he has, so many years in the bank and he has injuries at a position that, when you can't move around and you're beginning to lose some of your superpowers, particularly your arm strength or those things, it can be hard to manage and keep up. That said, over the weekend, I took some time to kind of think about it, and I looked at some more tape on Aaron Rodgers, and he does have his limitations in terms of like how he is played in the offense. And even though last year he had 3,800 yards, he had 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, there are some things that you can do to win with an aging quarterback who has some limitations. I go back to how the Denver Broncos won with Peyton Manning, Super Bowl 50. He was certainly not the Peyton Manning that had been the one that dominated the league, but he was able to offer them what they needed at the time, which was a high-end game manager that could get them in and out of the right plays. He could make a handful of plays when called upon, but the rest of the team kind of carried him over the threshold. That's when Von Miller won the Super Bowl MVP, and their defense was lights out. But Peyton Manning was able to kind of settle the troops and make enough plays to keep the train on the tracks. For Pittsburgh, best case scenario, that's what they're hoping for from Aaron Rodgers. They're hoping that a 4-time MVP, 1-time Super Bowl champion can give this team what it needs to get over the hump. Remember, this is a team that hasn't won a postseason game since 2016. And even though Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season, they've always been in the conversation or in the tournament. They haven't had a lot of success of late. Aaron Rodgers maybe comes in and maybe he can help them get past that, even though we've seen his postseason struggles with the Green Bay Packers where they haven't been able to kind of conquer that final frontier to make a Super Bowl run during his time with the Packers. That said, when you think about the motivation that Aaron Rodgers has coming into this situation, it's a legacy play. He knows that if he's able to do something special in Pittsburgh, it changes the narrative that has been written about him based on the last couple of years with the Jets, where you talk about the selfishness or whatever centric personality, all those things. It has an opportunity to change the narrative around him if he's able to win in Pittsburgh. It's the same opportunity that Russell Wilson was trying to take advantage of last year when he was the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. In Aaron Rodgers' case, the thing that troubles you about it is he waited so late in the process to sign. So here we are. We were a week away from minicamp when he inks pen to pad to join the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have a 3-day minicamp, and then they disappear for 6 weeks before they come back for training camp. Well, a lot of the things that you would like to see a new quarterback, and particularly an older quarterback, do, he won't have an opportunity to do in the offseason program. He's going to have to get all this work done in training camp. And remember, training camp is different now than in yesteryear. You only have 3 preseason games, and a lot of times the starters, the main players, they don't play a lot. So Aaron Rodgers, over the course of practices, maybe a joint practice or 2, he has to develop the chemistry with his offensive line, the playmakers on the outside, and a coaching staff in a system that is not one that he's been brought up in. The big challenge, outside of building the relationships with his supporting cast, his playmakers on the outside and the protectors on the inside, the big challenge is for him to get on the same page with Arthur Smith. For Arthur Smith to be able to look at the most recent film of Aaron Rodgers in New York and to accurately project what Aaron Rodgers will be able to do within the Steelers system. And then it's not only accurately projecting what he can do within the system, it is building upon the things that Aaron Rodgers does really well and making sure that he is playing to his strengths while also keeping in mind the strengths of the other players around him. And you're doing all this in what I would say a shotgun wedding fashion because you don't have a lot of time to get this done. Now, can it get done? Yes, we've seen other quarterbacks come in and get it done, but it's an ongoing process that will even bleed into the regular season. So if the Steelers get out to a slow start, don't fret. A lot of what happens to them early in the year will be due to, I would say, the assimilation of Aaron Rodgers into that offense. It is a huge challenge to kind of figure this out, but it's one where if Aaron Rodgers is not necessarily stuck on the system that he's always played in and is willing to meet the Steelers halfway when it comes to tweaking and finding a way to blend what they do into the things that he likes to do, it can work. But before we even get to that part of like what it looks like on the field, I think it's really important for Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin to kind of figure out what it should look like off the field. Normally, when you have a veteran quarterback of Aaron Rodgers' ilk with his pedigree, he instantly becomes the team leader. And that normally would be okay for everyone, given the success that Aaron Rodgers has had individually and even collectively in the league. You can't deny the fact that a 4-time MVP, a guy who has a Super Bowl championship on his resume, can win and knows all the things that are related to winning. But this is a thing that is built on trust in terms of the relationship in the locker room. It's built on trust. And teams are built on commitment, accountability, and trust. And when you have someone who shows up late, hasn't been at off-season program, there can be a little bit of question about your commitment, even though he said personal reasons kept him away. And so players can understand that and handle that. The accountability piece will be, how does he handle when things aren't going well, maybe in training camp or the system or learning the offense or whatever? How does he handle that? And is he accountable to the coaches and to his teammates for the mistakes that ultimately are going to come your way when you're a quarterback learning a new system? And then the last part of it is, do they have enough time over the course of minicamp and a 6-week training camp to build the trust needed to play at a high level in a conference that is loaded with elite quarterbacks? That is a big part of the issue, and that's the big thing that we'll be looking at as they go through training camp. Final part in this, and I'll talk about Mike Tomlin, and everyone reveres Mike Tomlin for his ability to take any team and find a way to whip it into shape and play within the Steelers culture to win games. I don't know how Mike Tomlin is going to establish the culture with a veteran quarterback who is not a homegrown quarterback, who is unfamiliar with the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers do business. Does that mean that Mike Tomlin is going to stand firm and hold Aaron Rodgers to a higher standard in terms of, hey, you need to be more like us as opposed to us being like you? Or is he going to fall into the trap that the New York Jets fell into, where they basically open up the kingdom to Aaron Rodgers and allowed him to have his way? And then what you saw was a lack of respect from the players to the coaches because it was really Aaron Rodgers' team. How Mike Tomlin handles establishing the hierarchy, where it's the head coach, the other coach is the quarterback, and the rest of the team, that really could determine whether this deal works out for the Steelers or not. A lot of intrigue, a lot of excitement about it, but man, there's a lot of work to do in a short amount of time if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. But you know what we will do? We'll be paying close attention to it because all eyes are going to be on number 8 in Pittsburgh. Some other news that broke out from Aaron Rodgers' former team, the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers cut 8-year pro Jaire Alexander, 2-time All-Pro cornerback. They cut him ahead of minicamp, and they cut him because, honestly, Jaire Alexander had not been available the last couple seasons. Over the past 2 years, he's only played in 7 regular season games apiece in 23 and 24. And if you go back to 21, he has only played in 34 of 68 games. No matter how good Jaire Alexander is, 2-time All-Pro member, a guy with 15 career interceptions, a guy who, when healthy and available, is one of the top corners in the game, it is just hard to play when someone is unavailable. And you can hear the frustration not only from Jaire Alexander and injuries, but from Brian Gutekunst, from Matt LaFleur. They had a tough time figuring out when Jaire Alexander was going to be available on a week-to-week basis. And when you're a team that builds these intricate game plans around a star player, and that star player is unavailable, and you never know when he's going to be available, it just makes it really, really hard, particularly when you're paying him on a 4-year, $84 million deal that, when it was signed, made him the highest paid cornerback in the league. There are a few things that people talk about in the NFL, and availability is your biggest strength. Like, your ability to be available is the biggest characteristic that will keep you around or not. Like, you have to be available. You have to be durable, dependable, reliable, however you want to phrase it. You need your star players to be there. And when Jaire Alexander has been on the sideline for 50% of the games since 2021, it just makes it very, very hard to keep him around, particularly when he's making big money, and that money could be spent elsewhere to ensure that your team is at its best when it's best required, particularly down the stretch. For Jaire Alexander, this is disappointing. You know, he obviously wanted to come back and kind of fulfill his obligations to the team. But once he's let go, he now has to find a situation that really works for him. And the thing that we don't know when it comes to Jaire is, what kind of situation is he looking for? Is he prioritizing ring chasing, where he wants to go chase a ring, be part of a champion? Or is he a guy that believes he still can play at a high level and he wants to reestablish himself as one of the premier cover corners in the game? Look, most players want to always make sure that people respect them as one of the premier corners. So I would think that Jaire Alexander would love to chase the ring, but I think he wants to chase the ring in a situation that allows him to showcase his skills as a top corner. When you look at the tape, Jaire Alexander is a guy who is terrific in man and in zone coverage. He has great footwork. He has great patience and persistence at the line of scrimmage. He does a really good job of staying in hip pocket positioning down the field. And when the ball is in the air, he has a knack for making plays on the ball. That said, for a guy who's been in and out of the lineup, can you consistently count on him to be the guy that you fell in love with when he was coming out of Louisville and became a guy that was really a star player in the league, first rounder selected in 2018? When I look at some of the teams that might have an interest, depending on his price tag and those things, naturally, I think about the LA Rams always have an interest in cornerbacks. And if he comes at the right price and the right deal, maybe the LA Rams could see some value in him. I think of teams like Baltimore and those things that have an opportunity to come and make plays and jump in. I think the board is really wide open for Jaire Alexander. But the first thing that he is going to have to prove, that it can be healthy, that it can be reliable, that it can be mature enough to handle some of the leadership responsibilities that teams will want to give to a veteran coming over. Really interesting deal. Oh, one other team that I would keep an eye on. Think about the Washington Commanders. I know Marshawn Lattimore is over there, but man, depending on the right situation, if you're really trying to chase a ring, Washington Commanders could be an interesting team to kind of follow. And I'll keep an eye on DC. Next, man, one of my favorite players, Nick Chubb, goes to the Houston Texans. Nick Chubb goes on a one-year deal. The terms right now have been undisclosed in terms of the cash amount. I can't imagine it being for a significant sum of money, but it can be a significant deal if Nick Chubb is right and ready to go. In Nick Chubb, the Houston Texans are getting a guy from Cleveland that ran for 6,843 yards during this time, a guy who, when healthy, physical, rugged, a guy who is a true RB1. He gives you the toughness to play in a power game. Even though the Texans don't need him in that role, they have an opportunity to take someone who is, well-respected, highly regarded, and to put him in a backfield with Joe Mixon and even Dameon Pierce to be maybe the ultimate physical backfield that you want to face. The reason why it's important that Nick Chubb teams up with Joe Mixon is because anytime you have two backs that can really operate as workhorse backs, it alleviates the pressure on C.J. Stroud. Remember, we saw C.J. Stroud struggle a little bit in year two. Not necessarily that he suffered from a sophomore slump, but the offense didn't operate the same as it did previously. And the way that you can make the game easy for the quarterback is dominant running game that forces people to drop a defender in the box, and you create one-on-one opportunities on the outside. Well, with Chubb and Joe Mixon, you absolutely have to respect the running game. And even though Nick Chubb is coming off a year with career lows in yards per carry, only 3.3 per carry, in terms of big play or explosive play percentage, where he only had 4.9% of his rushing attempts go for over 10 yards, he still is a threat if he's able to come even close to being the guy that was the Pro Bowl player in Cleveland. His size, his physicality, his toughness will give this team an edge that it needs. More importantly, if he's healthy and able to team with Joe Mixon to give them a formidable 1-2 punch, we can see the best of C.J. Stroud in H-Town. As this team is really looking to make a run at a deep postseason run where they can not only win the early rounds of the playoffs, but really challenge to go to the championship game, they're going to need their backfield to, I would say, bring a level of dominance that forces defensive coordinators to make hard decisions when looking at how they want to defend this offense. And if Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon are able to combine and share the duties as RB1, man, this Texans offense becomes really difficult to defend with Christian Kirk and Nico Collins, the Iowa State homies coming together. This is a really, really interesting move, and it's one that could really complete what the Houston Texans have on their offensive lineup. Final thing, since we're in the AFC South, let's go to Indianapolis and let's talk about Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson might go down as one of the best that never was. And that's not taking a shot at Anthony Richardson in terms of his shortcomings and the injuries and the things that haven't gone well for him in Indianapolis, but it's really a thing about Anthony Richardson being a workout warrior who really intrigued and fascinated the minds of scouts once they saw him at the combine. And the thing about Anthony Richardson, and we could talk about this at length, is Anthony Richardson is an outstanding athlete. He was a terrific athlete, one of the best athletes we've ever seen at the position when it comes to the testing and what he displayed at the combine. When you watched him play at Florida, there were some inconsistencies in his game, but he always had you wondering, man, if he's ever able to put it together, this guy could be really special at the next level. Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen were willing to roll the dice on Anthony Richardson with the 4th overall pick in a draft 2 years ago because they thought that they could transform an athlete into a hell of a quarterback if they had the time to develop him on the field. Unfortunately, Anthony Richardson hasn't been on the field. So they haven't been able to develop him. And because he's missed so many games, he has now cracked the door open for a new quarterback to take his job. Anthony Richardson has missed 17 games over the past 2 seasons, 2023, 2024. He has missed 12 games due to the shoulder injury that he re-aggravated. You remember going back to 23, he had an AC joint situation where he had to have surgery and it prematurely ended his season. He then missed some other games last year due to a variety of ailments that have kept him from being on the field. Well, now he is being reported to having some issues with that same shoulder, and the Colts don't know if he's going to be available for the start of training camp on July 22nd. Now that opens up a whole new can of worms because he was already being questioned and challenged in a quarterback competition by the Colts by bringing in Daniel Jones. They're bringing Daniel Jones on a 1-year, $14 million deal, and a lot of that was due to Anthony Richardson's durability issues and also some questions about his maturity and his leadership skills because they said he just wasn't ready to handle all the things that go along with being the franchise quarterback. With this injury preventing him from potentially being available in training camp, man, Anthony Richardson might have sealed his fate in Indianapolis by essentially handing the job to Daniel Jones. And regardless of what you think about Daniel Jones has been a solid quarterback throughout his time with the Giants. Not spectacular and didn't play up to his draft status, but he's certainly been solid when healthy. Shane Steichen has shown that he can take an athletic quarterback and have success with an athletic quarterback. Just look at the work that he did with Jalen Hurts. Now it's about taking Daniel Jones and putting him in a situation where he can have success in an offense that has a big-time running back in Jonathan Taylor. You have some intriguing weapons on the outside and wide receiver and Michael Pittman. You have Josh Downs, Alec Pierce. They have some firepower that can give you problems. They just need someone who can make the simple throws consistently and someone who can take care of the ball. Well, I can say a lot of things about Daniel Jones and what he can and can't do. The one thing that no one can question is like, look, man, he's a pretty heady player. He understands how to play winning football. We saw that as he led the Giants to the postseason. But he is more of a game manager than playmaker. And so it's on Shane Steichen to be able to put him in a situation to have success. If Shane Steichen is able to do that, the Colts may have an upgrade at the position in Jones over Richardson because he's a better player and he's proven to be a more productive player. And the way that he has played in the past will force opponents to play the Colts differently than they would have with Anthony Richardson. Instead of worrying about a runner who is a non-factor as a thrower, they at least have to worry about a balanced dual threat playmaker who can make plays inside and outside the pocket. While he's not elite, he's serviceable, he's competent, and that competency could make the Indianapolis Colts find a way to win more games than they would have with the young quarterback Anthony Richardson in the fall. Now, I'm not ready to give up on Anthony Richardson as the Colts are not ready to give up on him, but I will say these injuries have cracked the door, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Daniel Jones walk through it, take the job, and maybe make the job his permanently as he has an opportunity to play for Shane Steichen. Best wishes to Anthony Richardson on his road to recovery, but man, he needs to get back soon, or he could be spending the 2025 season on the sideline holding the clipboard. So that's the show today. I am Bucky Brooks. This was the Bucky Brooks Show. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you check out all my colleagues at Bleav. Support them for all the wonderful things that we're doing here as we have it covered. Baseball, football, basketball, whatever it is, we got you covered. Make sure you come back next time on the Bucky Brooks Show. We'll be talking more about OTAs and training camps.